We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. Today, we'll be joined by Air Force veteran Cami Gage, who is a coach and owner of Wild Blue Racing. She has over 20 years of multi-sport racing experience from triathlon distances, sprint, Ironmans. It's everything. Like, she's so athletic and so smart and so brilliant. She also does road and trail training and running and mountain biking and Xterra. It's crazy. She's competed as a professional triathlete, so she's pretty ripped.
What is Xterra? Not to interrupt, but that's one thing I meant to look up and get around to.
Like a Nissan Xterra?
You know what? We should ask Cami to break that down for us.
No,
I'm sure it's a specific type of race. Cami has coached a diverse group of athletes, including myself, which is great. For the last 15 years, she's devoted her time to wounded veteran athletes as well, and finding ways to do adaptive solutions to a myriad of athletic endeavors. She's incredible. She's a badass. She's an Air Force veteran, and she'll be joining us.
And she does Xterra.
Did you say she's coached you?
She has for my first marathon, and I did a whole season of mini sprint triathlons. So
wow. What's a mini sprint triathlon?
It's a form of self-deprecation that involves
a form of
sprinting.
Isn't it supposed to be flatulation, self-flatulation, where you
self-defecation, I think.
Self-flatulation. Yeah. So I met Cami when I was doing the Warrior Games. She was the coach for the team, and when I did the Warrior Games for 3 seasons, the inaugural and 2 after that, and then I wanted to try and pursue some other stuff and let other athletes have their go, and that's when I did the mini sprint marathons, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and try a full-fledged marathon. Oh, do you guys know how you can tell if somebody's ran a marathon?
How?
They'll tell you.
They have
so if somebody is an Apache pilot and does marathons, which one do they bring up first?
I don't know. Adam, have you run a marathon?
No.
Have you met? No.
Oh,
We're not marathon people.
No,
have you seen us?
Me and Joe, we're like 2 tanks. Okay.
We're Neanderthals.
These knees weren't built for miles.
What about hiking and stuff? Are you into that?
Casually.
I mean, yeah, there's not. I mean, I've lived in the South, most of my life, so there's not like robust. It's not like, oh, let me go get on this majestic mountain trail, right here. So at the rare opportunities that I've been in the mountains, I thoroughly, enjoy it. But it's only been a handful of times.
Yeah, I think big guys are kind of made for stomping up hills, though. Like, not quickly, but we can just do it forever. Because even injured, even with one leg, I love doing stuff like that.
I grew up in Texas in the 90s, so we just tried to push weights around and run back and forth repeatedly in short distances.
You put them down
from tumbleweeds.
Well, I'm not saying I'm any extraordinary athlete. I think these were just some of the goals that I had prior to my injuries. And I wanted to see if I could do it post-injury. It was just one of those mind over matter things. And I did it. And now I haven't looked back. I don't know if you could convince me to do another marathon, but I did it. So
also, and although the American Legion does not have a direct sports program for disabled veterans, many local posts support veterans pursuing athletic endeavors.
Yeah, and my American Legion post, shout out to Post 166 in Goose Creek, they definitely supported me through doing the Warrior Games and all my athletic endeavors. So reach out to your local post.
Rockstar.
All right, Alphas, stick around. We'll be back with Cami Gage right after the break. What's up, Legionnaires and sports fans? This is Adam Marr, American Legion member and Army veteran. I am beyond excited that the American Legion is continuing their tradition of support for the Army-Navy game presented by USAA, the first veteran service organization to sponsor America's game in its 126-year history. That's right, the greatest rivalry in sports just got even more meaningful for veterans like us. We're honored to stand behind the incredible student athletes who are not only competing on the field, but are also committed to protecting the freedoms we hold dear. And through this sponsorship, we're shining a spotlight on our primary mission, Be the One, our fight to end veteran suicide. So mark your calendars, tune in to CBS on December 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern to watch Army take on Navy in this epic, timeless showdown. To learn more about the American Legion's involvement in our mission, visit legion.org/Army-Navy game. Let's cheer on our teams, support our mission, and show the world what it means to be a Legionnaire. Go Army, beat Navy, hooah!
Today we're joined by Air Force and coach extraordinaire, Cami Gage. Cami joined the Air Force as a personal action specialist, serving for 7 years on active duty. And she continued to build on her passion for sports from childhood. She competed in a triathlon, mastered rock climbing and ice climbing, backpacking and skiing and snowboarding and trail running and pretty much every other athletic endeavor you can imagine. Cami, I miss you, and I'm so glad you could join us today. Welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, everybody. It's so good to be here. And Stacy, I miss you terribly. It's so good to be able to visit.
Stacy's very missable. Like, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but you're like, you're such a delight in person, you know? So it's all, you know, when you're not around Stacy, there's an ache, there's a hole inside you that, you know, about yay tall.
I think you're going to find that with Cami too, Joe.
Aw, well, good.
We haven't met in person yet, though, so we'll have to do that now.
You'll have to come out to the National one year. We'd love to have you.
Awesome.
I would like to start out first, of course, by saying thank you for your service. It's always awkward, especially between service members, because, like, well, you know, you too, ditto. But, you know, I think that's kind of the point of it is to always be reminded that it is a service. And so, you know, I like to start out by saying that. And then, but I want to give you sort of in your own words an opportunity to give us a little bit of your background, how you found yourself in the Air Force, and then how you found yourself out of it, and what you're running from exactly.
Yeah, I actually saw the movie Space Camp as a kid. That's the weirdest way that I got in the military. Do you guys remember that movie? You might be too young for that movie, but
I do.
It was this movie about how these kids accidentally ended up in space, and I was like, I'm going to be an astronaut. How do I do that? And heard about the Air Force Academy, and then just went full blowers trying to get into the Air Force Academy. Went there, ran track and cross country there. Quickly realized that I was a small fish in a very big pond and was just trying to graduate. So I ran for the first 2 years there, and then focused on scholastics as I dabbled in other sports. So I ended up hanging with just this great group of people who were doing track cycling and road cycling and Nordic skiing and triathlon. And I just followed them through the seasons. The Air Force Academy at that time had a bunch of club sport opportunities, which were a blast. So I just really fell in love with triathlon, and then continued my sport journey from there. Became a professional triathlete. While I was serving, actually, I was a personnel officer. And then in the last year of my service, I ended up in the World Class Athlete Program for triathlon. So nice. It was a blast. It was amazing. I traveled to 11 races in 17 races in 11 countries in a year. I think that was like my big push to try to get to the Olympics, and didn't make it, but had the most amazing sport experience, and just the loving support of host families in different countries. And just really learned a lot about people. And then somewhere along the way, I think I just, exercise is kind of I won't say selfish endeavor. Like, we do a lot for self-care, because I feel like if we can show up for ourselves, we can show up in a better space for other people, which I'm
Oh,
sure
yes.
you all can identify
Mhm.
with. If you take care of yourself and you put your oxygen mask on first, you're able to do that better for others. But you know, to an extreme, right? It becomes a little bit selfish. So I started coaching, and the coach the coach role is like a torch compared to the big lighter of athletic competition, right? It is amazing to watch people actualize and come
Oh,
into
yeah.
themselves and find themselves. And so once I started coaching, that was it for me. I was hook, line, and sinker. And then started my role first in the Air Force Wounded Warrior Adaptive Program, where I met Stacy, and then ended up working as part of the Now What, as veterans get out of active duty in their med boards and start on their veteran path in adaptive sports, to really just try to find a way to incite recovery in a new way forward, so that people can give back, you know, so they have the capability to realize the full potential of themselves. So yeah, so that's the long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's not long-winded at all. Trust me, we've had long-winded before. That wasn't it. I
Kimmy,
I
go ahead.
also I sorry, Stacy, this is way more important than what you were going to say. What is Xterra?
Oh my gosh, Xterra is a blast. Xterra is the off-road version of triathlon.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a swim in a lake, ocean, what have you, whatever body of water it's near, and then you do a trail ride on your mountain bike, and then you do a trail run, and it
All
is a blast.
right. Okay, I'm so sorry, Stacy.
No, you had asked Cami what her transition out of the military was like, and I just wanted to. I don't know if I know that about you. What was that transition like for you?
You know, it's interesting, because I kind of felt like with my sport journey that I already had something to hang on to. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, I was racing on the all military team. So I had this core group of people. It's not like that changed when I got out, because they were still racing. And so I got, you know, this group of people that were traveling, getting points on the ITU World Circuit, which is the circuit that professional athletes have to travel on to try to get points to qualify for the Olympic trials. And so I kind of felt like I already had something. I think, you know, just like everyone else, once you start to lose that, or more importantly, if you associate your identity with something else outside of yourself, you eventually have to find it. So I felt like my transition was difficult, but it became more difficult after I stopped racing.
Yeah.
And then I started to think about, you know, who am I as a person outside of the things that I do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a journey for all of us, whether we're in the military or not.
You talked a little bit about the torch of coaching. So one thing that really stands out in your story, as I was learning a little bit more about you, is how you've blended your elite level athletic performance and just your real heart for service. So when you first started working with adaptive veteran athletes, what surprised you the most, either about the athletes themselves or about the process that required from the coaching? Can you talk just a little bit about what an adaptive veteran athlete is?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we're all adaptive athletes in one way or another. We are all trying to find ways around obstacles, or using creativity to work with the body we currently have, right? And I think for us as athletes, we try to immediately go to the place that we were versus acknowledging exactly where we are, right? So if
Mm.
you have performed at a certain level in all things, and as the members of the military, we don't like to suck at anything, right? I mean, I think all of us can agree with that. So when we're all trying something new, we're all trying to find creative ways to get to where we were versus acknowledging where we are. And then we can work with that, right? So acknowledging where that athlete is, and then finding a creative way to get them to where they
Mm.
want to go. And I think that's very similar across the board. It just uses way cooler equipment to do it, right? So the adaptive sports equipment is incredible. I'm much more of a poet than a mechanic, so I surround myself with engineer minds who like to MacGyver things, right? And so everything that we do, um, you know, the prosthetics for ice climbing are super unique. The prosthetics
Mm.
for different types of sports are unique to those sports, and they're unique to every human being, and what their amputation looks like, what their spinal cord injury looks like. So we're working within what that person has to optimize their experience. And it's not necessarily to bring them to an elite level, but it's also just to have fun so that they can do sports for a lifetime.
I think it's hard to teach people to compete with yourselves in some ways, and you can enjoy competing with others, but it should never be your goal.
I think that's interesting, Joe, that you mentioned that, because when Cami was coaching me, most of the things I pursued were very singular. Like the only person I was working against was myself. So, for alphas, for all you listening, Cami coached me through the 2010, 2011, 2012 Warrior Games, a season of mini sprint marathons, triathlons during 2012, and then finally my first and only marathon, full length marathon, the Marine Corps Marathon in 2014. So, Cami, you're incredibly motivating and you know your stuff. If somebody's at home and they're thinking, gosh, that sounds overwhelming, where do you start? Like, how do you get them to believe in themselves? I mean, I know what it took for me, but how do you get the mental gymnastics? How do you get them started?
Oof. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's what I love about working for Semper America's Fund in their sport program, is because we get these chances to do small touches to gain trust. I think gaining trust is kind of the first thing. I think that sometimes we as athletes or as humans cannot see the potential in ourselves that someone else can see, right? And so if we can reflect the things that we see, even if they're seemingly small things, and the individual can believe in those small things, then they can take that step. So ice climbing is a great example for me, because ice climbing is not my first sport. I am a baby giraffe. But I love it because it gives me a beginner's mind. It's hard for me. It's a little scary for me. When we do our Team Semperfi ice climbing event, we start with breath. So everybody there does a clinic the first night over our family style dinner with breath.
What does that mean? Can you demonstrate that?
So yeah, so we can do an exercise here really quick.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Let's just do 3-4 count breaths.
Okay.
Your breath can help activate your parasympathetic nerve, which allows you to bring yourself out of that heightened state of alertness into a sense of calm. And when you can do that, you can focus at the task at hand. And so breath is a great ally, because it's a singular focus point. And once
Should
you
I
can
go
do
brush
that,
my teeth right quick?
no,
Because I'm
because
drinking coffee. Okay. All right.
I love coffee breath. You're good. I can't smell it, but I'm thinking about it right now as I'm breathing.
Nice.
Hot and
So,
tart.
so if you can practice your breath work initially, then you are singularly focusing. And then you can focus at a task at hand and do that one tiny task. To your point, Stacy, you start doing that well, you gain that little bit of confidence, and then you move on to another task, right? And so we'll do this breath work really quick, and audience members can follow along if they'd like. But this is just a simple one because it doesn't require too much mental gymnastics to do. So it's a great one to focus on if it's a loud environment and you don't need a lot of focus, but you need some focus. You've only got so much brain power, okay? Mm-hmm. So we're going to do 3-4 count breaths. Go ahead and take an inhale at your own pace. And an exhale. And begin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And just breathe at your own pace.
I think that's amazing.
I saw it in all of your faces. It
It
just
changes, yeah,
changed.
it changes everything.
You should
Yeah.
learn to count it out while inhaling. So you'd be like, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let's get her a helium balloon. No, I definitely felt like after that first deep breath, I really felt a shift. And I remember like going through some of these exercises because, you know, it's overwhelming getting in front of a task like a competitive sport and just, you know, feeling like, am I going to make it to the finish line? And anxiety can just ratchet up. And I compare it to a lot of the anxieties around post-traumatic stress and dealing with those symptoms and kind of psyching myself out of going to certain situations. Like, I don't want to go to the theater because it's super packed, or I don't want to go out to this restaurant because I know it's going to be loud. And what I found was a similarity between the sports and those symptoms, and being able to control one helped me combat the other.
I think that's a really good point, and I think that's the really powerful thing about sport is you have an objective, you know, and veterans are very mission oriented, right? So you have this goal of finishing this thing, which means you have to overcome certain obstacles to do it. But it's a really exciting goal. And so you take these small steps towards the things that maybe with post traumatic stress you might have difficulty with, right? So signing up for a race where there's going to be a bunch of other people, like, pretty scary, right? Getting on a plane to go to a sporting event or even driving to a sporting event might incite a little bit of anxiety. And so you overcome all these ancillary things just to get to the start line, which is pretty freaking great. We have a group at Team Semper that we train for the Marine Corps Marathon every year, called the Runner Battalion. We take up to 150 people start our program, and we train virtually together with a full training program. And then everybody meets at Marine Corps Marathon, which is a big event. But by then, they all know each other in the virtual space. They've all been cheering each other on through electrons, and they get there, and it's like a big family. So it's pretty cool to watch people overcome all these other ancillary obstacles with sport. And I think that is the beautiful thing about sport, is it bridges the gap between so many things that maybe you're working through. It just translates so well into life.
You know, I think also when you start focusing on yourself, you stop having expectations of other people. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that an example would be when people act outside behavior norms for yourself, sometimes it makes you focus too hard on their why, and you won't have an answer. You can't get one. Everybody's going through their own stuff. But when you focus on yourself, when you take that moment to breathe, like we just did, it reminds you that you really can only control what is around you specifically. And you can prepare for the oddities that happen because of that. But it's really, what you mentioned earlier about, basically what you were saying is physical health for you, and for a lot of people, myself included, is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge part of what I think. That's one reason why so many people struggled, not just from isolation during COVID, was the ability, being somebody who's not a runner and can't run. The gym is my spot. That's my iron therapy, and not being able to do that was a hit. It was a big hit that I think that changed the way that we learned to cope. And speaking of learning to be flexible and learning how to work around problems, as somebody that served in the Air Force, you understand that the best part of the military is when you wake up and know exactly what's going on, and then when you're out of basic, that's gone. So that's when the stress hits. So you've learned the hard way the difference between motivation and discipline. Like what I was just talking about, finding a way to still work on yourself when it's made more difficult. Running on days when it's raining and cold outside. That's a different Cami than the one that wakes up. That's the one that has to come out and say, am I going to be this version of myself today, or do I need to take downtime, because that's mental health as well. But I say all that because as you coaching wounded veterans in adaptive sports, and as you interact with them through the fund, what motivator do you find seems to work best or more consistently? What's your default motivator to get people moving?
I don't have a good answer for that. I think that we have a lot of different people that in the team Simplify portion of what I do. So within the sports program that we have different personality styles, and I think different personality styles work for different people. I think I personally am a softie, so I love doing what I do and working with the people that I do and finding those things that motivate them. I spend a lot of time listening because sometimes I feel like just getting through that, then we can get down to business, right? I mean, sometimes certainly there's tough love, but there's something holding us all back, and just kind of unlocking that. So I think just being kind and shutting my mouth and opening my ears is probably the biggest thing that I do. I'm a yoga instructor now. I actually went and got my certification after I realized working with endurance sport athletes that so much was happening between the ears. And so I start a lot of my sessions with breath, just because we can all honor the transitions that we come from. So, like if we're on an in-person event, for example, some people sleep really well and some people don't sleep really well. Some people had a little more boisterous night, maybe talking on the phone to family members. Some people didn't, some people just hung out and talked all night to their fellow service members. And so we just transition in the morning with breath, because that just brings us all centered and starts us on the same playing field. So yeah, listening, being kind, and opening my ears and shutting my mouth.
I like that it's more flexible, that there's not just a method you use, because that means, like you said, you're listening. You're looking for what this individual person needs. And I think that's one thing that the fund seems to really shine, even in so much as helping when someone doesn't ask, because they just feel that it's necessary in that moment. So,
Yeah.
I appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
Well,
And we're all motivated differently. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say I love that you incorporate breath and have been able to kind of, I think about the intersection of the physicality of the fitness and the activities that you've been doing, but there's a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual side to everything in life, and so being able to find those, I'm sure you're probably as good as a mental health coach and steward for total wellness as anybody, because of the physicality of the things that you take on and coach, and the need to be so mentally strong for some of those things, and the balance of what are these. And the great thing about breath too is it's free for everybody. You don't have to take anything. You don't have to go to a gym. Once you develop the practice and the understanding, it's free and attainable to everybody at any moment in time. And it can, that exercise was such a great example. And thank you for doing that, to just the break and the fight or flight stresses that we're always, being bombarded with. So incredibly important. I was interested kind of in maybe some stories or experiences that you've had, because you've taken on some of the hardest physical challenges, that are out there. And I just thought it would be cool if you could maybe share one of those. However you want to interpret it. I mean, it could be the hardest, but hardest as you define, from the extreme weather conditions, from the sheer just grandioseness of the challenge itself. Maybe it was something that happened to you like during that was unanticipated. And then what we always, obviously love to hear is, kind of what you learned through about yourself through that process. And does that at all, shape you and guide you today?
Oh man. Um,
take it in layers. Just the experience itself. What's one that you would share with us and the listeners?
Yeah. I think one of the best non-race experiences that I had when I stopped racing, I definitely wanted to hit objectives that were more of a journey. And my husband and I had the opportunity to do rim to rim to rim, which is running the Grand Canyon from the South Rim to the North Rim and back. And we did that in a day, which I don't recommend doing. It was a little cavalier. We were not ready. We really truly did do it kind of off the couch. He was in grad school on spring break, and we had a very short period of time to do it. So we were like, forget it, we got this. And we did. We ran from the South Rim of the Grand Canyon to the North Rim and back. It was a sacred experience to watch the terrain change from day to night, to watch the colors change on the walls. It was like the movie Avatar. There was greenery hanging in places that it didn't seem possible. The Colorado River running through there was incredible, and it was really way out of my league for comfort zone at that time in terms of just blisters all over our feet, sand in places we shouldn't have sand, and sunburn and everything. I mean, it was just overwhelming. But I remember thinking, we took a break and we were about 3 miles from the top, and we were just sitting in a bowl full of stars. There wasn't a moon that night, so it was incredibly dark. It was probably the darkest night I've probably ever seen in my life, and
Wow.
and just really the experience of feeling so small in such a big place, which is both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I can put one foot in front of the other, and I can continue this, and that's kind of all I have to do in this moment, in this beautiful space, in this beautiful time. So that was by far the most sacred experience I think I've ever had in terms of athletics.
Well, I love that you use the term sacred too, because it really highlights just how special and endearing it was to you. I also think like the how often do you get to do events and things like this with your husband? Maybe not as much, or maybe where he's doing it with you. So I'd imagine that's very meaningful as well. And then like rim to rim to rim in one day, you said, or is that 24 hours? How many miles is that
It's 48 miles.
in
Oh, yeah,
24
it
hours?
sounds like it was
And
hard.
it
40
took us it took us a long time. It took us about
And you're
17
doing all the
hours.
elevation too, right?
It's 22,000 feet of net
That's
elevation
incredible.
change. And honestly, the only reason we got back up in that time, because we had like 3 hours of foot care that we were dealing with. And
Mm-hmm.
you've interviewed a lot of trail runners, that's probably a thing, but it does become really, really a serious thing. So we had about 3 hours of foot care somewhere in there, but we knew his mom would call the cavalry if we weren't out by midnight. So we were just doing everything we
Wow.
could to get in at like 11:54 and be like, we're okay.
What
So
year was this? What year did you guys do this?
I think it was 2016. So it was
Okay.
quite some time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Would you
That's
would
great.
you do it again?
I would. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would do it again in a heartbeat, just because of the space, just because of the sacred space and that
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah.
So, I've not done rim to rim to rim, but we were stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, and when we would go out to NTC, we would chart our paths in the for our flights in the helicopter, and we did stay at the Canyon regional airport, so we got to come in our flight of Apaches and kind of look out and see the vastness of the Grand Canyon. And then when we departed the next morning, we deviated from the route just a little bit to like, we weren't down in like the main canyon, but we did get a little side canyon action, and it was one of the coolest things. And that was like really before like I had an iPhone,
What's
or
side canyon action to you, Adam?
just like the little as it starts to ramp up into no canyon, not main canyon, side canyon.
Getting a little spicy in
not
the
like
canyon.
your main girlfriend. It's like your girlfriend on the side. It's like, no, but it's funny because there's like restricted, kind of airspace, like where you could go and get in. But that was early in my aviation career. It was one of the coolest like little opportunities. But I could only imagine, being on foot, being there for 24 hours, being out there like exposed in the raw elements, and being able to have that. My mom and dad visited the Grand Canyon one time, and they took this little pink Jeep tour. These are all my Grand Canyon stories. I promise I'm almost done. And it was my dad passed this year, and that's the most meaningful memory that she goes back to for like a special time for her and my dad. And so thank you for sharing that with us. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. There's something
and really
magical.
challenging too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something really magical about that place for sure.
Rim to rim to rim. So challenge accepted for the America 250. Everybody get out there. Yeah.
I'm not going to volunteer for that. Okay, couple of quick questions, and then probably a longer one for you, Cami. Okay, really quick answers for these. What does Cami do for fun, not sports related?
Not sports related, not fair.
There's no fun if it's not sports.
Woodworking. I am dabbling in woodworking. Again, terrible at it, but love it.
That's amazing. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Favorite sport to watch on TV?
I don't have a TV. That is my answer.
Okay, good. I like that. Favorite sport to watch live and not participate in?
Soccer.
Okay.
Ooh. She had to get rid of her TV after watching 4 hours a day of curling for 3 months.
What's your favorite live soccer match that you've ever seen?
Oh, I played soccer as a kid. So honestly, watching my nephew.
Oh, yeah.
I love watching kids soccer. It's so much fun.
What's a sport you wish you could participate in, but probably lack the talents? Well, not the talent. I'm sure you have the talent, but maybe skill set.
Honestly, NASCAR.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to go fast.
Just the pace lines, managing gas, managing tires. I mean, and there's
the left-hand turns really draw you in.
So much, yeah. Yes. It's just like track.
So NASCAR, not F1?
No, it's like one sponsored by Rolex and one sponsored by KFC. It's just different,
Yeah. Different group of people.
I like fried chicken and I like going left.
I just love it. I love the grittiness of it. I love all of it.
I love it.
That's fantastic. Okay. So Cami, is there ever been a time where someone you've coached wound up coaching you in some way?
Oof.
Oh, Stacy with the questions.
Yeah. You did.
Aww.
You did. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you came into sport a little apprehensive. And I think a lot of people do, just wondering, what is this for me? Because I don't think this is for me. I think I should be doing something else. I think, you came into it with a great deal of compassion too. And you showed me, I think veterans in particular kind of compare their experiences to others. Like, maybe my service was less than, maybe my injuries are less than, maybe I don't belong here. And you told me one time, your stuff is your stuff. Your stuff has value. Your ability to overcome your stuff has value. And you taught me that. And I have taken that with me with every athlete that I work with. Because
that is a very Stacy answer, by the way. You're absolutely right. When you said it, I'm like, I could hear her voice saying that.
I don't think she used the word stuff, but she did say.
She probably did.
Shit. Everyone
Yeah, I
here
was about to say.
much less poetic than what you're making me sound like, Cami.
No, it was a huge lesson, and it just taught me that we all come to the table with different things, and we all carry different amounts of weight in our backpack, but it's our weight. And as we start to take those things out and work through them to get to a goal, like they all have value. I think that's it. Full
I
stop.
think what you taught me was to be able to let somebody else help me carry that, Cami. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad thing to ask for that help either. And you really did. You helped me out so much. I'm so thankful to have you in my life. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
I am absolutely here for these sincere, heartfelt moments. This stuff drives me. I think that one thing that we do is we get a little superficial, and I joke around a lot. Like when you're younger, I was talking earlier about how I met my wife, and when I was younger, the reason I was friends with my brother-in-law that introduced me to my wife was because we both had long hair and drove Pontiacs. And when you're young, that's enough to like, okay, we're friends. And we lose that, and it's a shame. It's a shame to lose easy connections with people because you feel isolated and alone, and a lot of times we've built the conditions to make that happen around us.
It's also a shame that you had to lose your ponytail in the Pontiac.
Same.
Listen,
I think we need to try that. I know you're losing it on the top, but you can go for a bullet.
Let's bring
I'm
that.
gonna
let's
do
bring
a
that back,
comb over
baby.
from the chin.
You bring up an interesting point, though, I will say, of this beauty of impermanence, like Pontiac's aside, right? And I think as I get older, that is something that I hold very, very dear. The gift and the bittersweet of impermanence, that we won't be here forever. And we've all lost people that we care about in the service of their country and elsewhere. And so you don't take these moments for granted. You don't take these experiences for granted. And the older I get, the more appreciative I am of those deep connections, because I don't know for how long I'll have them. And how miraculous is it that Stacy and I were on this big blue ball at the same time in the same place, and we got to meet, and that all four of us are here on that same blue ball at the same time. It's miraculous when you think about it. It's really beautiful. And so you just say the things you need to say to people, and you don't take their relationships for granted. I mean, I think that's such a gift.
Thank you.
Yeah, alphas, you don't have to be the best. You just have to do your best and have your personal best and keep striving for one next step, and make sure that open your life up for people to come in and take those steps with you. And I'm glad to have Cami, Adam, and Joe in making those steps, and Holly, who's in the background, making those things happen. And of course you alphas, because we're connected. We may not see each other, but us converging here in this very moment makes a difference.
It's fantastic. You're awesome. The time that you spent with us today, it means a lot. To talk about taking this bad stuff and turn it into good stuff, taking your baggage and turning it into a show and tell where you sort of pick apart the things about yourself that you struggle with, and you surround yourself with people that lift you up in those moments. And I think that that's what is important, is to surround yourself with people that add to you, not take away. And you've certainly added to our lives, in this interview. By the way, alphas, if you want to learn more about Cami at Wild Blue, you can go to Cami. If you want to know more about Cami, you can go to wildblueracing.com. It has nothing to do with NASCAR, but not yet. But we'll have that website in the show notes along with her social media handles. And before you sign off, is there anything else you want to share with our alphas that we didn't get an opportunity to discuss?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fund one more time. I love what I do. I love who I work for. If you go to thefund.org, you can learn more about what we do. We actually have a really cool match going on between now and the end of the year, matching donations up to $7.5 million through the Bob and Renee Parsons generous generous donation program that we've had for many, many years now. So if you go to thefund.org, you can learn more about what we do if you need assistance, and you can also give if that feels right to you.
And it's not just the events that you guys run where people get an opportunity to ride bikes with other veterans, or to work out, or run, or do other sorts of adaptive sports. There's also therapies. Neuroscience is being done by and being funded by the fund. And so there's a lot of really cool things. You should absolutely, as a veteran, get involved with the fund, because they're doing everything you can just about imagine. I'm sure I could get somebody to help me learn how to do wheelchair fencing if I wanted. Like, you guys do everything. So
Yeah, we
appreciate you.
do. Yeah, we have a lot of really great programs that you can check out for service members and family members, and not just sport related. So yeah, definitely give that a look.
Well, Cami, through all the peaks and all the valleys and all the trails in between, we sure are grateful for you to be here with us today. Thank you so much for visiting. Alphas, please stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Hi, I'm Pam Ray, National President of the American Legion Auxiliary. The American Legion Auxiliary is thrilled to be part of the American Legion Family USA 250 Challenge. The challenge is a special way to honor our nation's 250th birthday. Participants can choose 1, 2, or all 3 categories, but the one that means the most to me is community service, because that's our primary focus in the American Legion Auxiliary. We put service first as a way to honor the generations of veterans who came before us to protect our freedoms. There are many ways to achieve the community service goal. A unit could serve 250 meals to homeless veterans, prepare 250 care packages for deployed troops, or create 250 quilts for veterans in VA hospitals. There are so many ways you can participate, but the best way is to do it alongside your Legion family. Visit legion.org/USA250 to get started.
Okay, Alphas,
Right.
we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Joe.
So, the wreck of the U.S. battleship USS Arizona could see its status elevated from a solemn memorial to a living laboratory after it emerges that oil continues to leak from the ship more than 80 years after its sinking at Pearl Harbor. And we're coming up on Pearl Harbor Day, so this is a really cool thing to learn about if you don't know about it. So, researchers led by the University of Houston and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, WHOI, analyze.
Whoa.
Whoa. Like Joey from Blossom. Whoa. Analyze samples collected by the National Park Service, NIPS. NIPS. Near the memorial in 2016 and 2018 is heavy fuel oil refined from California crude, consistent with U.S. Navy fueling practices in the early 1940s. So, despite the sunken warship being underwater for decades, the oil retains high concentrations of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. PAHs. I'm loving all the acronyms that are obviously intended to be phonetically said. Compounds known for their persistence and potential toxicity. The wreck has an estimated 600,000 gallons of oil. Okay, that's money, baby. That's gold. I'll go down there and get it myself.
I wonder why they haven't siphoned that out. If it's continuing to leak, like, what is the thought process?
I can tell you exactly what it is.
Okay.
It comes down to how much it'll cost versus how much it'll save. And that point has not yet been reached until the public outcry is like, hey, this is really dangerous. And they're like, but also it is a solemn memorial and nobody really wants to mess with it.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that.
I'm sure it is a balance of the two, but if something is, 600,000 gallons of oil, they're waiting on gas prices to hit $4
they were probably like, dang, we should have done this back in the 60s. It would have been like 10,000 times cheaper.
Oh yeah, it would have been an investment back then. And while it's not leaking at a highly concerning rate, it still requires monitoring. So this gives researchers the opportunity to study the long-term fate of petroleum trapped in shipwrecks.
Oh, nice spin there.
The Arizona Memorial. Yeah. I'm here for it.
You know
But the
what? This
Arizona
gives us a
Memorial
great
honors.
opportunity to research.
This is a good research opportunity while we're honoring the 1,177 crewmen who unfortunately died in the attack. Among them, more than 900 sailors and Marines. As one of America's most hallowed war graves and the site of tragedy and sacrifice at the outset of a global conflict for our country, the site demands the best and most considered science we can muster, said David Conlin, a Marine archaeologist with NPS, with NIPS. The work we have completed is groundbreaking in its implication and also its respectful, non-invasive approach to data gathering. The researchers contend that the findings have global significance since thousands of World War II-era wrecks containing millions of gallons of unrecovered fuel rest on ocean floors worldwide. The Arizona wreck offers a unique insight into how oil behaves over decades in low oxygen submerged conditions, which can greatly inform modern spill response strategies and environmental risk assessments. I just want to add here that it's interesting that we're doing this now when I think that we're finally truly starting to see people see the need to step at least partially away from full reliance on oil. It's just an interesting, not that any of this is going to be really usable considering modern techniques, but still it is an interesting sort of situation that they find themselves in. Like, yes, it's a danger to the environment, but it is also a memorial. And despite me making jokes earlier, that's something I would not want to disturb myself. What you guys think?
I just spent the night on the USS Alabama in Mobile Bay with my son's youth group for the church. It was the second time that we've done it. And they've done such a good job preserving that thing. I mean, all the way from as high up as you can go to as low down as you go. They've, made it appropriate, kind of for the times. There's little mock-ups of, everybody in different workstations and stuff. And just, it's a really cool museum. And then just getting to be on there and think about, the operations of that ship in that time. There's a cool little theater where it plays like the old black and white kind of like movie that they put for the ship from the time it was made to its wartime operations and all that. So, and it's a battleship, and it's crazy how many guns there are on that, and some of them are massive. And it's just like anywhere you can think like you could stick a gun, like they suck on. But then like us, Joe, being bigger guys, like going into the holes of the ship and even sleeping on the bunk, which, oh my gosh, like that's quite a thing, because all the kids like, just climb in there and they have the best sleep of their night. Meanwhile, all the dads are like breaking their backs on the bunks. But I was just like, I'm not a Navy guy. I'm so glad I was in the Army. It's like confined spaces and stuff. But just thinking about the rich history of those missions, the sailors that were on it, and then now thinking about the Arizona and what it endured. So it is a memorial, and the legacy and protecting of that. And it's crazy to even think that there was that much, I don't know, oil or, all the different things on board that required. And no, those are not intended to be at the bottom of the ocean. So,
No,
what do you do and how do you do that? I don't think there's an easy answer. And I think that they've done a really good job with it thus far.
I mean, I've visited that memorial, and it's very powerful, very moving. And of course, I can understand why it would be disruptive to try and go and siphon the oil out. I just try and look at that as balancing it against what we're doing to the environment by not doing it. Could there be a respectful way when technology gets to a place where it would be less invasive or not, not intrusive, or you know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we should consider that as a nation, while also honoring those who've fallen. Anyway, thanks for that story, Joe.
No problem. Anything for you, Stacy.
Robert Stillman Garcia may have gone missing in action during the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, but his legacy of service held strong in his family during the 8 decades it took him to return home. I never thought this day would come, said Navy Lieutenant Allison Ledesma, his great-grandniece. She knew Garcia primarily from the portrait of him that hung in her childhood living room, alongside the telegram informing the family he was missing. Garcia was 23 and serving as storekeeper 3rd class on the USS California, his first duty assignment when the Japanese attacked. He was assumed to be among the nearly 2,400 Americans killed that day, but the Navy did not confirm the identity of his remains until 6 months ago. When Ledesma arrived in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, 75 years after him, it was also her first duty station. She felt the family legacy the moment she saw Garcia's name on the California's memorial. Seeing his name there made it real for me, she said. Ledesma spoke of her Tio Beto's legacy following a burial service at the Coastal Bend State Veterans Cemetery in Corpus Christi, Texas, where hundreds gathered to pay respects. Thanks to a renewed effort in 2018 to identify sailors lost on the California, Garcia's remains were confirmed in April. J.R. Bonilla, a Marine Corps veteran and great-grandnephew of Garcia, accepted a folded American flag during the service on behalf of his family. The closer we got to today's service, the more real it's gotten, he said. Garcia, enlisted at age 22, went to basic training in San Diego and arrived in Hawaii to join the crew of the California in October 1940. He stayed in touch with his family, writing to ask his older sister, Sarah G. Canales, to stop sending so many cookies and cakes because it was causing too much attention with his shipmates, said David Valdez, a great nephew of Garcia, who now holds the correspondence between the siblings. Instead, Garcia asked his sister to save the baking for when he visited home. After the attack on December 7th, 1941, many of those shipmates wrote to the family that Garcia was thought to be alive. But as the months dragged on, it became clear he was missing in action. In total, 102 crew members from the California were killed. The remains of 42 sailors and Marines were identified immediately and were buried at the Halawa Naval Cemetery in Nuuanu Cemetery. The crew had been preparing for an inspection that morning, so many of the watertight doors, portholes, and exterior doors were open. The Tennessee-class battleship took 2 torpedo hits at about 8:05 a.m., piercing the hull and rupturing the forward fuel tanks. It rapidly flooded and listed to port. The ship's 5-inch guns and 2 of its 50 caliber machine guns were fired in response. But the crew quickly ran out of ammunition. The California then sustained multiple bomb hits that ignited a fire that destroyed the structural integrity of the battleship. Over the next 3 days, it continued to fill with water and sank to the seafloor. Interesting that it took 3 days. Salvage efforts remained ongoing, and the California was refloated on March 24th, 1942. The crew members who could not be identified were buried as unknowns at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, also known as the Punch Bowl in Honolulu. In 1947, American Graves Registration Service personnel disinterred the unknowns for further analysis, resulting in 39 additional identifications, according to the Defense POW MIA agency, which we've also had on the podcast before, learning a lot about the incredible work that they do. Identification efforts renewed in 2018 when DPAA exhumed the final missing sailors of the California, which resulted in 11 identifications. 9 of Garcia's shipmates remain unidentified, according to DPAA. Ledesma's grandmother...
I wonder if that's because they didn't have family members that they had access to their DNA. You know, it's curious that, you know, if they can't find someone, I'm wondering if it was a limited amount of remains that they had, or whether it was just a database failure. I guess my long-term point here is that I wonder if there's hope in the future for those 11 people to be identified through, you know, their families. Sorry, just a thought. Just joking it up.
Very well be. I think I think when the guy came on, he told us that was one of the reasons, right? Because they didn't necessarily have DNA samples, at those time periods back then
Yeah,
for those individuals.
probably a big factor in it.
Says Ledesma's grandmother was among 3 family members to submit DNA. There you go, Joe, to the Navy, which helped return Garcia home. Because Ledesma is now on a second tour at Pearl Harbor, she was involved in the process with DPAA, including serving as the official escort to bring her great uncle home to Texas.
That had to
Part
be
of
really
him will always remain in Pearl Harbor, she said. Part of him gets to be home.
That's pretty terrific. Great job. Shout out to the DPAA for all the hard work they're doing to bring Americans home.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible mission. And, Alphas, we're going to have in our show notes a link back to that DPAA episode if you want to check that out. So on the heels of all these wonderful Pearl Harbor stories, I thought I'd dedicate my scuttlebutt to something more personal. When I was little, my mom moved my sister and me into her parents, my grandparents' place, when she and my Navy sailor father split up. And my grandpa, whose name is Charles O'Neill, he was surly, oppressive. He was a retired command master chief and had a sort of wall-to-wall counseling type of mentality, very, very on par with his generation. It was not unheard of for us to have white glove inspections on Saturdays, and he taught us to swim by throwing us in the deep end of the pool without floaties or any sort of support. Needless to say, I didn't know how to swim. But he also trained us to do breath work by holding our heads underwater until our lungs burned. And though he was my grandfather, my sister and I just... It was traumatic, but I'll get into why.
Yeah.
One day, I finally got around to asking my grandfather, and granted, I was still very young, but I got to ask him about his tattoos, and he had anchors that ran up from his wrists to his elbows on both of his forearms. And to the best of his ability, he explained that each anchor represented one of his friends that died at Pearl Harbor during the bombing. Later, when my grandpa died, I was older. I was already in the service myself. I did a deeper dive into his story. What I had learned was that my grandfather and his brother were both served at Pearl Harbor before and then during the Japanese bombing. They had enlisted in the 30s to try and get away from the famine and the farming in South Dakota. That's where they lived with my great-grandfather, who was a Marine veteran from World War I. And they lived in a repurposed boxcar. And the dirty 30s were very painful for them, like all Americans at the time. And so the Navy was sure to provide my great uncle and my grandpa 3 square meals a day, and shelter, which is obviously really important, and of course, continued education or at least an occupation. So from what I know, they were both assigned to the USS Grebe, Grebe. It's a Lapwood class minesweeper, and the Grebe was eventually assigned to Pearl Harbor to use to tow for gunnery and bombing practice, but also to participate in minesweeping training. During their shore duty at Hawaii, my grandpa and my great uncle made a lot of friends, especially guys from church and from around the ship, and of course other ships nearby, with the myriads of ships that were docked at Pearl Harbor. You can imagine they were all partying it up pretty good, from luau's and hulas and what sailors get up to in terms of drinking and all that stuff, and of course the 3 square meals. And that said, so everything was good until the surprise attack on December 7th, 1941, which we're coming up on that anniversary, as Joe mentioned. So that's when hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended, and they managed to destroy nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 airplanes. Since their ship, the Grebe, was in dock getting repairs, her 3-inch guns had been dismantled for the overhaul, and my grandpa And my great uncle and the other sailors aboard the Grebe had to fight with rifles and pistols. They were credited with shooting down one of 3 unidentified planes flying low over the naval yard.
Imagine being a pilot and getting shot down by somebody with pistols. That's just embarrassing.
Well, I guess when you're flying that low, it's possible, I suppose. I always laugh at Hollywood when they misrepresent like the accuracy of a pistol for long distance range. I'm like, you guys, seriously. Anyway, so as the attack died down, my grandpa and my great uncle jumped into the water, into the rescue efforts to use small boats and drag wounded sailors in from the water and provide first aid as best they could. And what I'm told, my grandfather had relayed this story to others who were much older than me at the time when he was living, was that it was very traumatic for him and my great uncle to see the skin burning off the sailors who were stuck in the oil slick that was on fire. And pulling these guys was intense. And so I guess what I'm getting at is the experience changed his life forever. You know, there was 2,400 Americans that died as Joe and Adam mentioned in the previous stories, including dear friends of my grandpa and my great uncle. And this also impacted their mental health. So when I was little, I felt his oppressive, controlling, and twisted nature was more of a personality flaw or just plain evil incarnate, when in fact, as a combat veteran with my own traumas, I now recognize those as being symptoms of post-traumatic stress, just manifesting in a very dark and sinister kind of way. You know, from my generation, unlike my grandfathers, who never addressed their traumas, I had the opportunity to do that. And, you know, I never saw him drink, but his unaddressed issues really manifested in those dark ways, like holding my head underwater. So in his mind, he was providing me the skill to survive should I ever find myself stuck under for a prolonged period of time, like under a burning oil slick, like his friends did. You know,
yeah.
As twisted as it sounds, like he was doing me a favor in his mind, not knowing that he was ultimately hurting me in the process. But that's how these things work sometimes. Needless to say, knowing how his untreated PTSD impacted his life, and for those around him, it made me determined not to follow in his footsteps and to get treatment myself. And so my grandfather was beloved by many people. And to them, he was charismatic and kind and funny, but behind closed doors, he was a completely different person. For me, he was a monster at times. And I'm not saying that everyone who's battling demons turns into a monster like that. I'm proof. Like, I have PTSD and I'm not a raging monster, but I guess what I'm saying is that each individual suffers in different ways, and that comes out in different ways. And it can become generational trauma, leading to a cycle of unhealthy relationships. So if you relate to my story, or if this sounds anything close to what you felt, if you are a family member of a veteran who's suffering and you're feeling its effects, I want to just take a moment to say you're not alone, and it's not your fault. And there is help out there to get it sorted. And it's never too late to make amends with yourself, or make amends with your family members, and to help them get help. So this is my shout out to everyone who's been impacted by traumas like this, military or not. And there are fun therapies out there: music therapy, equine therapy, talk therapy, group therapy. There's so many options. And Adam can tell you all about other alternative therapies and
all the therapies.
Pearl Harbor happened 85 years ago, and the ripples, and I'm proof, the ripples of its impact are still felt today. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, obviously, but also that the type of person that you are is not something that is a natural thing. And so for better or for worse, the things that you've gone through have forged you into something more dynamic than anyone has any right to be. So, you are appreciated, and I'm sorry that that's what it took to get you here, but I think you're pretty awesome, Stacy, and I'm glad that you're here and that you've learned to turn some of this bad stuff into good stuff.
Well, thanks, Joe.
We need more Stacys in the world.
Oh, I don't know about
More
that.
Stacy's and less Joes.
I'm going to talk to Holly because I found some fun old photos that are from my grandfather's era and from Pearl Harbor. So we'll see if we can put those links in the show notes back to those pictures if we can find a way to do that. Holly, the super producer, can work that out.
Holly, jolly Holly. Great, great story. Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. All right, Alphas, thanks for listening. We've had a great show today. We love being with you. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us some mail and some guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.